11 o'clock, welcome to Cabinet meeting. It's broadcast as usual via the website and archived. Usual stuff about microphones on and microphones off. We've got apologies from Lee Brecken, and Pam Posnett is unable to join us, but she's online. Thank you, Pam. Minutes, 10th of February 23, pages 3 to 14. As you'll see from the note on the agenda, the minutes of the February Cabinet meeting were not published in their entirety in the printed and PDF documents of the April meeting, although they were published in full online. So for the avoidance of doubt, it is recommended that we reconfirm these minutes as a correct record, and I will move them. Deborah?
I'll second that.
Show of hands in favour of the reconfirming. Thank you. More minutes. These from the previous meeting on the 24th of April, 15 to 22. I'll move them. Deborah?
I'll second.
All in favour? Thank you. Urgent items, none. Declarations? None. Oh, there is one. There's one from me. I wish to declare other registrable interests in respect of the reference to the Freeport on item 5 on the agenda. I think I forgot about that. Item 5, provisional revenue and capital outturn 22-23, pages 23 to 66. We've got Declan here, the new boy, in his first meeting as the Director of Corporate Resources rather than the Assistant. Welcome, Declan, in your new role.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning. The report sets out the provisional revenue and capital outturn for 2022-23 and a summary of the revenue outturn set out in paragraph 6 and shows an underspend of £6.7 million before additional commitments have been made. The main driver of the underspend was the release of funds held that tackle the impact of the challenging economic climate. We were able to contain costs better than first feared, and our income received a significant boost from higher interest rates that offset the extra inflationary pressures within the year. In terms of services themselves, there's a £6 million overspend in totality, despite Environment and Transport Service delivering a £2 million underspend. The high needs service continues to be difficult financially, with the grant overspent by £7 million, although in the positive, this was £2 million less than was budgeted at the start of the year. Children's social care overspent by £3 million. The main cause was the cost of placements. Although the number of looked after children has decreased slightly, the average placement cost has increased significantly, which has driven the total costs higher. Adult social care overspent by £3 million, where the impact of COVID is still being felt, primarily through hospital discharges being a key concern. Another area with the residual COVID impact is our trading services within corporate resources. School food is the main area of concern, with meal take-up still lower than before the pandemic, and inflation has compounded the problem, with food and labour costs increasing significantly in the year. Although last year's performance was better than expected, inflation has continued to remain much higher than most forecasts, and this will continue to put pressure on budgets, both through higher costs and greater service demand, as the impact of residents is felt. The allocation of the underspent through the new commitments tries to balance preparing for the continued difficult economic challenges with service delivery, and the report recommends that £3.5 million is set aside for a provision against potential credit losses. This is principally for adult social care, where annual income is over £60 million, just to give it a bit of context. Collection activity will obviously still continue, but higher than average write-offs are expected, for example due to delays in court application and cost of living pressures. £3 million has been allocated to highways maintenance to help manage the continued pressure on the network, and the balance of £150,000 is just set to capital funding. The report also provides a brief update on the East Midlands Freeport. The Freeport will be funded ultimately by the retention of business rates on new developments. However, until new premises are occupied, the Freeport needs working capital, and at the end of the financial year, £2 million are being provided for this purpose, as a loan at a commercial interest rate. Now that the Freeport is incorporated, arrangements can be formalised, and it is recommended that a loan facility of up to £4 million is made available to the Freeport so they can continue to operate. The risk of non-payment of the loan is expected to be low due to the significant interest that is already in the sites. The report finally covers the capital outturn, which was a £29.6 million underspend on a £124 million programme. Virtually all of this variance is slippage on schemes will be incurred in the current financial year. In a similar way to revenue, there is significant financial pressure on the programme. Inflation on infrastructure projects has risen significantly, reflecting the global situation. The cost increases are not expected to be reversed, which will continue to restrict the number of schemes we can complete. In addition to the recommendations on the allocation of underspend in the Freeport loan, the report includes 2 further recommendations in paragraph 2, namely that the outturn and the prudential indicators are noted. Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to move the motion on the order paper. I think we can all be pleased, or at least relieved, that with the performance overall, because autumn time last year, things looked really, really bad, didn't they? Very challenging for us. I think it's worth noting that our strong balance sheet and our treasury management policies, which are, I think, sensible and prudent, give us a good return, and the extra income there has proved to be very useful in short-term mitigation against inflation. But here's the but coming up. We know we're low funded, and we must therefore continue to be prudent, particularly with inflation. You know, it's coming down, but it's still high, isn't it? I think the underspend is being used in the right way in the recommendations, right approach. It balances stronger resilience with extra investment in our roads, our highways, and I'm sure we all know how much the public, observe and comment on, the need to make to look after our roads. And finally, I think it's good that we're supporting the Freeport initiative. A continued problem there is with the development of that is the lack of funding to cover all the implications. The ability to retain business rates to supplement developer funding should mitigate adverse impacts of the developments on infrastructure. That's it, Chairman, from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah?
I'll second the recommendations on the order paper and just take a few minutes just to talk about my portfolio, which is the children and families. There's quite a lot of detail within the report that I won't go through, and Declan has mentioned some of them. But I think even though we're in really difficult times and our costs are going up because of inflation and the cost of placements, when you look at it overall, the work we're doing with our partners, Newton Europe and Barnardo's, we're starting to see some of that come to fruition now. So we are keeping our numbers of children in care low, so they have gone down. So we are going in the right direction. There's a lot more work to do, but with the government reviews that are taking place, and hopefully some of those will be published in the next 6 months to 12 months, we will hopefully be in a lot better position this time next year, but we're definitely going in the right area.
Blake, and then you, Christine.
Yes, thanks, Leader. As lead member for the waste portfolio here, I just wanted to refer to the underspend of 2.3 million. It's one of the few underspends on the whole of the revenue budget. That and obviously the Chief Executive's department, with a marginal underspend of 0.7. But I just want to make it clear that those underspends partly have vindicated our decision to internalise the operations of the waste and recycling centres, because they are derived from the dry recyclers predominantly in the market. So we're getting an income off those dry recyclers, but it's a volatile market. So there's nothing to suggest that that income will continue. So at the moment, there is showing an underspend there, which is obviously supporting other overspends in other areas of business. But come next year, depending on market forces, that might well turn into a massive underspend too.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair. Just really to highlight what Declan said, that my portfolio, Adults and Communities, is only overspent by 3.1 million. Sounds a lot, but it's only 1.7% of the department revenue. So I'm quite pleased with that, because earlier on it was going to be a lot higher than that. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, now the speakers. As leader, I mean, I look at these numbers, Declan, and as Richard said, we're low funded continuously. We've got massive inflation, which is difficult for us, again, with being low funded. And I look at the particular areas where we need to be careful. Obviously, residential care costs are up, high needs block up, home care up, and now we've got school meals, which historically we actually made a small profit on, which is now a huge cost to us, which will need some careful handling. And then the only positive thing in this at all really is we've managed to find £3 million to fill some potholes. But having said that, It has been moved and seconded. All in favour? Thank you, Declan. Leicestershire Local Flood Risk Management Strategy Public Consultation 67-328. This provides a report of the updated LLFRMS, which is nearly as long as saying the whole thing, and seeks our approval for a 10-week public consultation exercise on the draft strategy and associated documents. We remember that we had significant flooding back in 2019, and as a result, we commissioned a flooding scrutiny review panel, and one of its recommendations was a refresh of this strategy, so we thank them for their work. We've got Anne Carruthers here today, who's the Director of Environment and Transport. Then I'll go to Ozzy as the Cabinet Lead Member, and then Blake. Over to you, Anne.
Morning, thank you, Leader. The counties, and I'll say it once, Leicestershire's flood risk management strategy has been
Leicestershire's local flood risk management strategy.
Absolutely, thank you for that correction. Keep me right, yeah. Has been updated, and this report seeks approval so we can go out to consultation and that update. The previous one was adopted in 2015, and as you've heard, we've had significant flooding since. We've also had that scrutiny review panel making recommendations, hence, really apt to update it and really necessary at this point in time. The refreshed strategy and action plan are appended as Appendix A and B for your information. We are the local flood risk authority for Leicestershire, and as such, we are responsible for developing, maintaining and monitoring a strategy for local flood risk management. The responsibility also includes working with all flood risk management authorities to identify and coordinate when they have responsibility to take action in relation to flooding. It does not, however, and I will just emphasise that, mean that we have got the powers to make other authorities or other bodies take action. Our role is to coordinate. We do not have those powers. The strategy itself sets out the main activities that will be undertaken to manage local flood risk by the various flood risk management bodies involved, and it also updates the principles, objectives and policies in relation to flood risk across the county. So worth highlighting to Cabinet that Government in January this year announced its intention that from next year the upper tier authorities would become Sustainable Drainage Systems Approval Bodies, SABs, another acronym for you to take on board. And what that means is we'd have a responsibility for approving new drainage systems and adopting where there's a duty to do so. This duty has been reflected as much as we can, given what we know at the moment, within the new strategy update that's before you today. So subject to Cabinet approval today, we would undertake the consultation for 10 weeks, running from 5th of June to 13th of August. We would then propose to bring the finalised strategy back to you, to Cabinet for approval in November this year.
The thing I find when I go to, say, Breedon, that's had flooding issues, as you know, is that people are confused about our role. They think they see a bit of flooding, or they flood, and they think they phone me up, I get you out there. We look at it and say, yeah, it's flooding, and then we put it right? That doesn't happen. That's not our job, is it?
No, it's absolutely not our job. Our job is to coordinate. If there's been flooding to property, there's something called a Section 19 report. It's a requirement that we carry out that investigation to see what might have been the factors in that flooding. Now, it might have been something to do with the water companies, it might be the highways drainage, might be riparian owners, i.e. landowners, etc. So we have to assess the matter to which responsible flood management authorities have a role in putting something right. We can then put that forward, but we cannot make that third party either take action or prioritise it. For instance, if it's Severn Trent, they might have a programme and it gets programmed in 5 years' time to take action to it. We cannot do more than that. And I guess, the public look at us as lead local flood authority, think you've got flooding in your title, you sort it. And unfortunately, we do not have those powers, and we certainly don't have the resources, the funding.
It is really hard to explain.
It is
really
incredibly
hard. Anyway, Ozzy, you know about this.
I certainly do, and we've had flooding in Groby as well, Chair, and working with the Highways Department, Severn Trent, we've actually, moved forward, but it's took me 5 years to get to that point. It's not a quick process, and thankfully we're moving forward during the autumn. But what I'd like to do is thank Scrutiny for the work that they've done on this, and they've done a really detailed job on this, and I would like to say thank you to them personally. I moved the report, and I'm pleased to move the report. It's not been updated since 2015, and we're now in a position to update that and go out to the public. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Blake.
Yeah, you've stole my thunder, Leader, because Ozzy is absolutely right. When we became the lead local flood authority, I think I held Ozzy's position. So I was responsible for introducing the strategies and the setup here at County Hall. And it's become apparent that, as you've said, the public tend to look to us to sort flooding issues out. And as the director has just mentioned, we don't have the power. One of the things I did in my capacity as lead member at a Scrutiny agenda planning meeting was suggest to Scrutiny that they invite in Severn Trent and the Environment Agency. And I'm pleased to see in the last couple of years, certainly the last meeting of the last but one meeting, I think it was, of the Environment Scrutiny Panel, we had a joint meeting between the EA and Severn Trent where we're fostering better relations with these organisations, which is encouraging. Because we don't actually have any teeth when it comes to sorting flooding problems out. So the better relationships we have with these entities, the more, hopefully, the more success we'll get at solving some of these flooding issues around SG. And there's one final thing I just wanted to say, Leader. There is a perception, probably a right perception, that development over the last decade or so has potentially contributed towards some of the flooding issues in and around Leicestershire. One of the things planning authorities, borough and district councils, are responsible for is making sure that the drainage systems and the systems that are put in to mitigate the flooding actually work. And to my reckoning, there's no system out there at the moment that actually double checks whether these systems are actually doing their job. And it's a matter of debate at one of the scrutiny panels, and it's on record. And I'd very much like to see borough and district councils using the powers that they have to ensure that planning consents that they've approved for particularly large development, actually the drainage systems that are in those developments are doing just that, draining the water away and mitigating the impacts of flooding. And I'd like to see more evidence, frankly, that those systems are fit for purpose.
Will your new SABS powers help you with that?
It should help that, because there will be a far more thorough and extensive process with us, approving those systems. And then for some of them, where we take them on and adopt them and maintain them, it won't be all, but for some of them, the onus will be on us to make sure they're still functioning correctly. There will obviously be others that come out with that and don't fall to us, and we don't take on and adopt. And I think that will still be the same position. It'll be reliant on the district authority to enforce if there's an issue with that that's not then compliant with the planning consent. So it'll be a bit of a mixed case, but could potentially help us.
Do the districts have sufficient expertise in-house, or are they just having a bit of a guess at it?
Well, it's more about the enforcement powers to then take, to raise the issue with the developer, whoever the responsible party is. It's for them then to have the expertise to put it right. The district's role is to raise that as an enforcement issue. It's not necessarily to say what's wrong with it technically, but it's to raise it with the relevant party.
Do they do that?
I can't, I'm not close enough to be honest. I would say it would probably, my guess would be it would be hit and miss if there was a really sufficient issue that was being raised constantly to, then, require the district to take some action on it. I would suspect, like us, they're lacking in resource to be able to enforce adequately.
Peter?
Thank you, Leader. Just picking on Blake's point about agencies getting involved and engaging with councils. I know certainly my conversation with Severn Trent, clearly I've got an interest being an employer as well there. I had a conversation with them a couple of weeks ago, and they're very keen to engage with councils, come to maybe present at all member briefings, etc., to help to keep members abreast of the situation, maybe to educate members on how the process works and their own progress of work. So I'm more than happy to kind of join up with Severn Trent and the council to make sure that that's taken forward. And just secondly on that, Blake's second point about, and Leader, your second point on that around the public's perception of how this process works. I think it's definitely an education piece there around getting that comms out to make sure that it's clear who is responsible for what in the process and how to take that forward to ensure that there isn't that confusion amongst the members of the public.
So they certainly are confused. Blake, you didn't remember saying.
I need to formally second the report, Leader, so there we go.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Are we all in favour? Thank you. Have you still got Tor work for you? She's good. I don't know what a proper name is. Always everybody calls her Tor. Ah, she's very good. Okay, a new responsibility here. Local Nature Recovery Strategy Responsible Authority Status 328358. So this is a new duty. It's a serious duty. You're going to introduce it, Anne, and then I'm going straight to Blake.
Thank you. Another acronym for you, Leader, LNRS, and that'll be one you'll be hearing a lot of over the next few years. And as the leaders just said, we've got a new statutory duty on us under the Environment Act 2021.
Have we got any new money for this?
There's new burdens funding for the development of the strategy and the consultation and taking on, specialist advice, etc. in developing. There is no new funding to date that we're aware of for the delivery of the strategy. It seems the inference is that it will be done through other mechanisms, existing ones like Environment Land Management Scheme. So there's an assumption there that will come through other existing mechanisms. And the reality will be, we'll need to wait and see whether things like that are going to be adequate and sufficient to take forward the way we'd want it to be taken forward.
Because obviously as a low-funded authority, we like the idea, but we do need the money to deliver it.
Absolutely, and we'll need to see. We have been given money, however, to develop it, which is what will happen over the next 18 months or so. So just to give you an idea, it's a spatial strategy. It'll identify the nature priorities for the county with actions that will contribute to the government's 30 by 30. And that basically is to protect 30% of the UK's land for nature by 2030. It's about reversing the decline in nature in essence, in a nutshell. The government's currently putting in place a national framework to support the preparation of these strategies. And as part of that, we have been designated, LCC, the County Council has been designated a responsible authority for our area, which is the LLR area, Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland area. Just to clarify, however, we had fully anticipated, because it had been indicated that DEFRA would have sent out the formal letter designating that. However, we're still waiting on it. We don't anticipate the situation to change, but we haven't technically got that formal letter yet. From what we know to date, this role will involve leading on developing this strategy, contributing to the delivery and taking reasonable steps to involve the supporting authorities. It really will be a partnership document. Obviously, again, it's not something we on our own can deliver. There will be a host of other authorities involved. To date, we've set up a steering group, including ourselves, the Environment Agency, Forestry Commission, National Forest Company and district representatives. And the work's focusing on collecting data to develop the strategy over the next 18 months, which will include public consultation. We've covered the point about funding, so that just leaves me to say we're asking Cabinet to note the new duty on us as responsible authority for developing this. And again, we will bring back updates to scrutiny and Cabinet as we go through the process and for formal adoption when it's ready.
Quite a serious power we're getting here, Blake.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Lita. It is a serious power. It's going to take some time to put the strategy together, and the report identifies a period of about 18 months. And I think we've got in excess of 300,000 to put that strategy together. But as you quite rightly say, we've got no money to implement it. So we're looking to government to properly fund the implementation of the strategy. It's important because obviously it's part of the Environment Act, and it's a part of improving the environment here in the UK, and then on a global level it's a part of reducing carbon emissions, etc. But there's also in the planning suite of documents biodiversity net gain principle, and hopefully this strategy can support that. But in planning terms, this strategy, once adopted, will have some significant planning weight. So when planning consents are approved, it'll have to comply with the strategy that we're putting together just here. So it will be an important document once it's adopted, and we'll go to every length to make sure it's a quality document working in cooperation with the partners of Rutland and Leicester as well. So I will move the motion on the order paper.
Ozzy?
Yeah, I'll second the motion. You're quite right, Blake. It does need to work with planning, and we do need to make sure that we do protect the environment more and biodiversity. Within the department, we're looking at increasing biodiversity also along the verges around the county. And it's very important that we do look at that and protect our biodiversity and the climate. So I'm very happy to second the report.
It's the sort of thing we need to tell all members about, isn't it?
Yes, because, ultimately it will impact, across the county. And as Blake's already said, local plans will have to take cognizance of it as well. So it's well worth, notifying across.
Yeah, I think, and for county councillors, we should do an all-member briefing, because this will impinge on all planning applications. And it's important we get it right. And I think it's important that all members, county councillors, understand it. And of course, a lot of them are double hatters as well. So would it be any use doing one before the summer? Or do you want to wait until you've developed more stuff?
Can I discuss that with officers to see the stage we're at as when it may be most valuable for members, and come back and let you know?
Yeah, I think it's important we do brief them fully. And we've got those Tuesday briefings which members type of know about. And it would be interesting because it is a serious piece of legislation. Okay, moved by Blake, seconded by Ozzy. All in favour? Thank you. 8, recommissioning of sexual health services, outcome of consultation and proposed new models. This is on 359 to 400. It's doing exactly what it says on the 10. Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee considered the proposals in January 2023 and supported the new model. Their comments are summarised in paragraph 39 of the report. We've got Mike Sands, Public Health, and Joshna, who's the assistant, to present it. Who's doing it, you, Mike, or Joshna?
It's going to be Joshna, with just words from me to start with. So
Okay.
yeah, not the first time we've recommissioned sexual health services. It's one of our kind of bigger contracts. I suppose the one with this one, Joshna will go through the detail. What we've seen, I guess, over COVID is a quite marked change in the way that people use our services, particularly online. So this one represents, I don't want to call it a radical change, but actually in terms of model, it is one of the bigger changes that we've seen over the last 10 years. So with that spoiler alert, I can do it with Joshna.
Not sure I've got much to add now.
Sorry.
Yeah, just a bit of background. So the council's got a statutory duty to provide comprehensive open access sexual health services for our population. What we currently provide within that is some clinic-based services, online sexual health services, and then we've got some services within the community for our local access. All of the contracts for those services end on the 31st of March. And then, as Mike said, with the pandemic, that it's changed significantly in terms of the way our residents access the services. So with the end of the contract and the changes to the way services are accessed, we thought it was pertinent to do a considerable review of the existing offer. We did an initial period of engagement with stakeholders. We reviewed the existing provision. We developed the proposal that then went out to consultation. The model is described within the paper. The key changes were to proceed with a Leicestershire and Rutland service. Currently, it's a Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland service, and that's just due to the similarities with Rutland in terms of the demographics, the geography and the need, and that being quite different from that of the city. But in terms of things that we were looking to retain, but change in terms of what we put in the service specification, we wanted to retain the hub and spoke model for the provision so that we've got our complex care support, but also the more localised, lower level support. Continuing elements like our condom distribution service, the availability of our online sexual health services. One of our biggest changes is the way that we provide the community-based contraception services. So currently those are provided by our GPs, and the offer is just not consistent across Leicestershire. So we're wanting that to be a dedicated service provision solely for what we call LARC, or long-acting reversible contraception. So we did the 8-week consultation, which started in January. We had a total of 119 responses. That's the most we've ever had for a service review like this. And generally the feedback was positive. Some of the challenges that were flagged were around existing services, which we can change through what we put in the service specification. So they were relatively straightforward. So the key themes were around challenges with accessing the current provision, but once they access the service, they were generally satisfied with the service provision. There was a preference around having a range of options, so having face-to-face, having local, being willing to travel further for more complex support if needed, the online offer, it was also flagged around a gap for targeted health promotion work for the most vulnerable communities. The Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee did consider the proposal in January and were in general support of the model. So the feedback's in paragraph 39 of the report. We also sought feedback from our potential service providers, and again, really positive general support to deliver those services within local communities, a desire to be part of that bigger system, and that they weren't deterred by the service changing from LLR to Leicestershire and Rutland. Due to the general positive responses that we've received, we're not proposing the proposed model that we went to consult on to change drastically. So that's we're coming back to us to proceed with that model should the Cabinet approve.
It's a very full explanation, Josh. Nice. Surely you've got nothing left, Mike, after that.
Well, just a bit about City, just to make it clear, as Josh said, it's not that we've fallen out for the City, but in terms of that model, it's very much the Haymarket funneling people into the middle of the city. And for the City, that's fine. For us, I think, as Joshua explained, we just, for City, for county, it's the other way around. We need to push the services out so they're serving our community.
Yeah,
again, it's not a relationship
no,
issue.
it's different there, isn't it? That's the problem. Okay, this is one of yours, Louise.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to propose this. I think the key points for me is that it's a holistic approach to the sexual health service delivery. It's far easier access for County and Rutland residents than previous. Offering different options makes it far more convenient, but it's also showing that we've listened to what the clients want. The access nearer to home and the more consistent service across the county. So I'm very happy to propose this.
Very good. Christine?
I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Okay, all in favour? Thank you. Good work from you two guys again. Membership of Leicestershire Safer Community Strategy Board and Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board. Well, we've got Rutland for observers and you want to make them full members, and I think it's a good idea, but you'll tell me whether I'm right or wrong.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Leader. So the report that you've got in front of you is to inform the Cabinet that Rutland County Council will become a member of the Leicestershire Safer Community Strategy Board and to seek approval for Rutland to join the Leicestershire Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board. The Safer Community Strategy Boards were set up as a result of the Crime and Disorder Regulations, which states that for each county area there shall be a county strategy group, and both Leicestershire and Rutland councils have created bodies to ensure that regulatory compliance is in place to manage those community safety matters. And the regulations also confirm that representatives from other local authorities may attend the strategy board meetings as well. In relation to the Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board, these boards were required as a result of the Domestic Abuse Act in 2021 and sets out that each local authority in England must appoint a local Domestic Abuse Local Partnership Board. The board in Leicestershire was established to ensure that we are compliant with that, and it carries out the governance and consultative role for a number of domestic abuse functions. And Rutland Council has attended these meetings of this board as a participating observer from its inception. Its membership is formalised, and Rutland Council has indicated it will retain a group to oversee the domestic abuse matters. In terms of the proposed membership, the proposal will provide opportunities to better share information, intelligence and reduce duplication. And Rutland's attendance at meetings of both boards as a participating observer already does give some benefits to those joint workings. The changes will give Rutland Council full voting rights on both of the boards, and at their meetings on the 30th of June, both boards will be asked to agree the change of membership and any consequent changes to their respective terms of reference. Rutland Council's Cabinet at its meeting on the 11th of July will be asked to consider its membership of both boards and its own arrangements going forward to ensure compliance with relevant legislation. There isn't any statutory requirement to consult on this matter, but initial discussion has taken place around the proposed change in membership of both boards, and it was supported by officers of both authorities. So I move to the recommendations on the order paper. Thank you.
We only need a seconder then, Deborah.
I will officially move the recommendation and agree that I'm happy for Rutland to join with us. So I'll move the recommendation on the order paper.
Thank you. Louise?
Happy to second.
It's been moved twice and seconded once. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you, Jane. Items referred from open scrutiny, none. Urgent items, none. So thank you very much.